The first stage in making this is making the chili powder itself. These are the sweet red chilies that I explained all the details of in my first volume of my cookbook. You can use some other chilies if you like, but these will give you the best results. If you want the best results, dry your own and use the chilies I explained. What I'm doing here, I'm just tearing it off a little bit to get rid of this stem. You don't really need to. I mean, you can cook this into it. I just don't like to in this. So now we have dried red serrano chilies, and as you can see, these vary quite a lot in size, and also they vary in, you can vary them as to how hot you want to make this. If you want this really, really hot, use 3 big ones. I'm going to go about the middle. I'm going to use 1 big one and 1 small one. This will still be very hot. Now I've got a full teaspoon of coarse salt that I'm putting in. This isn't really to salt the dish, it's for the abrasive qualities of the salt, because these chilies need grinding up, and this will assist. And once you've got them started grinding, like this, now we can add all of our other ingredients. And a couple minutes later, I've measured out all of the ingredients, including those 4 cloves. Now, the only other trick, if you can call it that I can share with you here is the types of paprika that I'm using. For the smoked paprika, I'm using an actual pimenton from Spain. The regular high-quality paprika I'm using, of all places, this comes from Sweden. It's all organic. Really, this comes from Hungary. It's just that they're very selective. They pick out the best quality possible, Santa Maria, and they charge you plenty for it. These little packets are not cheap, but these are really extraordinarily good quality packs of paprika. And this is what we're going to end up with, a jar of chili powder. And if you dip your finger in this and taste it, you'll see this is much, much hotter than the chili pepper you typically buy. It has much more flavor. It's also a little bit bitter, but that bitterness is going to go away on the prolonged cooking of the chili. This is the kind of meat that you want to use. It doesn't have very much fat. It has a lot of connective tissue. This is going to be tough normally, but this is going to cook for a really long time, so it'll be fine. It has a lot of deep beef flavor. You just have to cut the band of tissue around here like you see, get rid of this, and then dice up the rest of the meat. And you'll have some scraps in the end, including the marrow bones, which you can use for something else, as you'll see in just a minute. You want to cut these into about 1/2-inch dice, or about 1 centimeter. And we've reduced it down to where we have marrow bones, the cubed meat, with some scraps here you can use for soup, and here's our chili powder. Add the first tablespoon to this, and then massage this in. Well, the beef is coming up to room temperature, and it's been rubbed with the chili powder. We assembled some bacon, garlic cloves, the onion, and the bell pepper. After dicing up the bacon, we started out cooking on a medium heat in a cold pan. After a few minutes, when you've got a good amount of fat rendered out of this bacon, we put about half of the meat in. Don't put it all in. We're going to do this in 2 batches. You'll overcrowd the pan if you do all of it at once, or you try to do all of it at once. Now I'm going to increase the heat from 4 on up to 7. After about 3 minutes, when you've gotten all the pink off of the meat, we're not looking to really blacken it deeply here. We just want to get that raw surface off of it. I'm going to transfer this out and put the other half of the meat in. Stir it around until we lose the red on it. Halfway through cooking this one, you notice you got some really heavy dark fond on this. I'm going to add half of the red wine to this now to help deglaze the pan. This is how we build layers of flavor. We're treating two parts of the meat slightly differently. You're going to see more of this in the second volume of my cookbook. I'm going to explain more about this theory. Okay. This looks pretty good. I'm going to transfer this now. Scrape the bottom, get up as much of that fond as you can. I'm going to transfer this to the plate. Then I'm going to put the vegetables in. Okay, get all the meat out. Onion. The bell pepper going next. And as these give up some moisture, the moisture that comes off will help deglaze the rest of the pan. We're going to help this out a little bit more by adding a little salt to this. We'll adjust the salt in the end, but right now we just need a little bit to help get these vegetables to sweat a little bit so we can scrape up the fond off the bottom of the pan. Yeah. Another thing we can do after a couple minutes to help add some moisture to this pan, we have this meat that was browned off. I'm going to add the juices from this back into the pan with the vegetables. It picked up a little piece of meat there. We'll rescue that. Yeah, make sure this doesn't burn, but you want a really good caramelization on this because this is a big part of the flavor here. If you don't caramelize this fond at the bottom and get these vegetables really cooked, it just won't have that depth of flavor that you're looking for in chili. Of course, you can go too far and actually burn it. Don't do that. This is looking pretty good. So now I'm going to add the garlic. This is chopped, but it's not finely chopped. This is going to cook for a long time. We certainly don't want this garlic to burn. But the moisture that comes off the garlic will also help loosen up a little bit of that fond. Cook this. I've reduced the heat back down to number 4 now, finally. And I'm going to let this cook like this for about 2-3 minutes. Stir it a lot. Scrape the bottom. And a couple minutes has gone by. As is often the case with these relatively simple dishes, the biggest part of the skill involved is in having the confidence to get this very deeply caramelized without actually burning it. And that's something, it just takes practice. You have to watch your heat, keep stirring it, keep an eye on it, smell it, watch for the aroma, but you want to get it deeply caramelized without actually burning it. There's your maximum flavor. Okay, now I'm going to add this passata, pureed tomatoes. Of course, now this will pick up all of the fond on the bottom because we've got a lot of moisture here now. And make sure you do that too, because if you leave some fond in the bottom now, that will turn to carbon over the long cooking time. So you got to make very sure that you've got all of the fond picked up off the bottom at this point. Now screwing around now. Okay. Once we've made sure that we've scraped all the fond off of the bottom here, the first priority, the next step is to add the 2nd tablespoon of this chili powder that we made to the tomatoes. And we're going to let this cook with the tomatoes for a few minutes, just a few minutes. Incorporate this well before we add the meat back in. We want to get rid of the sharp taste of the tomatoes out of there. Start it turning into something sweeter, like an Indian masala. Just cook it for a couple minutes, then we'll put the meat back in and the other ingredients. After a couple minutes has passed, finally, we're going to add this meat that was browned earlier to this. Heat's on a 5. Now, the ground black pepper. Stir this around. We're going to let this cook for a couple of minutes. We'll let that pepper penetrate the beef a little bit. Very thick mixture, so you're going to watch that it doesn't burn. But it won't be a problem for just a couple minutes here. After a couple minutes, I'm going to add the rest of the wine. Stir it around, and let the wine, the alcohol in the wine evaporate off for about a minute. Okay, been about a minute and a half now. Now I'm going to add beef stock. Now we turn the heat way down to just under 3, and we begin this long cook time with a lid on it. Now, after 1.5 hours, we remove the lid, we add the Worcestershire sauce, give it a little stir, and now we're going to cook it for about 30 minutes, still at a simmer, but with no lid on it. We want to thicken this up a little bit before we proceed. Now it's been half an hour. I'm adding the balsamic vinegar to this, give it another stir, and now I'm going to put the lid back on it and continue cooking. It has been 1 more hour, and now we add the final dose of the chili powder. Make sure you watch the notes there for the amount to add. Stir, put the lid back on, and keep it at a slow simmer. I've got it on a heat of 2 out of 1 to 10. Now finally, we're in the last stages here. Whether you add beans or not at all is up to you, and I know there's going to be some purists out there that are going to scream that I just ruined this wonderful homemade chili by using canned beans that were just simply rinsed. You know, I've made it both ways many times. Sorry. I just think this is a lot easier than cooking the dried beans from scratch, and in chili I don't see it making any difference at all. The last thing I added there was about a tablespoon of red wine vinegar, also optional. Also, some people will say it has no place in chili. I grew up with some vinegar in the chili at the end. Yeah, suit yourself. I like it this way, so that's the way I'm making it. Now, the final last stages of cooking here, and then plating. If you like my videos, look for my cookbook, now available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other internet bookseller sites. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.